say, that kind of fooled me a little bit. There go the biplanes. can't wait to see how they're gonna pull this off. Yes, every one of the airplanes you're gonna see here today are all from World War II.
Cold water.
What a move there. What a move.
We'll show you the art of the advanced trader later in the show. Here we go. Time and world. And right behind him, Tom Trimble, the PT-26. My bad, Tim Trimble. Fred Debbins going up in a PT-19, followed by Harry Johnson in the infamous Stearman. Oh, look at this, we got two of them today. Somebody threw a curve at me.
God, look at that. There's 5. Wait, that's 6. And
That's
number
Chris
7.
Kaplan in that one.
Yeah.
Over them because they were used up in Canada and other cold areas of the world, and it's not really good to fly an open cockpit airplane when it's a tendency to make life a little difficult. Right behind them there is a PT-19. That's Ron Gertson. They changed the order up a little bit here today. But the PT-19, that's the original design that Fairchild came up with. For those of you who like motorcycles or convertible automobiles, that is the ride. And right behind, an airplane infamous for its ground handling characteristics, which challenged quite a few pilots and still does today, the Boeing Stearman. And here's another one. They often called her the Yellow Peril. The airplane in the hands of an inattentive pilot upon landing or sometimes even takeoff had a tendency to swap ends. Now look at this airplane, civil defense markings on it. Interesting thing about those airplanes is the civil defense was often surveying the coasts of the eastern shores of the United States. And what were they looking for? They were looking for U-boats. That's right, the Germans had stuck right into our backyard and had sunk a tremendous amount of shipping. So they started sending airplanes out. The idea was that we were going to stop the Germans. Well, civil defense took over, and several of these aircraft went out there loaded with bombs. And they are credited with sinking not one, but two German submarines. There was a U-boat captain that was picked up right after his U-boat was sunk or captured, I don't remember which. And in the meantime, our PT pilots are getting ready to recover. You're going to see some wheel landings here. You're probably going to see them stretch the landing roll out a fair bit. Although they've got pretty good separation right now. That's one thing that they're very much aware of. When you're doing formation landings such as this, you have to have a safe distance between all aircraft. And there are several different. A few years ago, wow. It's not just an airplane ride, people. It is a step back in time. And here she comes, Yankee Lady, Boeing B-17 G model. You can tell the G because it has the chin turret under the front of the airplane. Looking for the shadows crossing the trees. There they are. Perfect example of a wheel landing there. Mains touchdown first, and then they lowered the tail. Let's listen.
Oh yeah, there they
And
go.
there's the breakaway. Each pilot breaking away 2 seconds after the leader, or I should say the aircraft in front of them.
I love that sound.
Maneuver they call the quarter clover. Back to straight level again. He's going to pull up again. There he goes up over the top. Hanging by the belts right there. Weightless in the cockpit of the airplane. Pulls out at about 4 G's times the force of gravity. Kevin Rousseau there with the inside loop. Rolling it over. Oh, look at this force there. Kevin Rousseau managing to do an aileron roll out there. Coming in from the right. Here's Kevin Rousseau. Watch for the nose to come up. There it is. Coming up over the top, hanging by the belts. And coming around. Here's one loop. Maneuver. It looks easy, but to keep it symmetrical, especially depending upon the aircraft that you're flying, it's pretty difficult. And as Kevin completes that second loop, this airplane is more than 80 years old. And I know what you're thinking, wow, that is quite an elderly airplane, isn't it? Maybe, but that airplane is in just as good a condition now as it was when it rolled off the factory floor. Take off, roll. Precisely every 90 degrees. Now he's going to sneak off into the distance for a little bit here and reposition his aircraft. And when he brings it back in, he's got more to demonstrate. Now you're probably thinking, all right, this is aerobatics. Why are we doing this with a World War II vintage aircraft? Well, it's very simple. Because when you're dogfighting, you're doing aerobatics. And these are maneuvers that you're seeing today that can either get the enemy off your tail or get you onto the enemy's tail, which is where we preferred you to be. But being able to escape and evade the enemy just as important. And these maneuvers are part of it. Of course, we're not doing them with AT-6s because it really wasn't used as a fighter plane. It was a trainer. That was a half Cuban 8 there. Keep an eye out for this. pulls up again. But these maneuvers will get you out of trouble if you happen to be a fighter pilot with the enemy on your tail. These maneuvers were taught as the basics. There was a lot more that went into getting onto the enemy's tail or getting the enemy off your tail. But this is where it was based on. And there's the other half of the Cuban 8.
God, that's cool.
There we go. There's that slow roll. Another thing to bear in mind is that this is the state of the art 80 years ago. It is amazing how the times have changed. But yet, there are pilots all over this country that absolutely love this airplane. And of all the thousands and thousands built, there's still over 400 of these flying. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I thought he cheated on that 4th point. Maneuver. He's going to describe the inside of a barrel laying on its side. The maneuver is called the barrel roll. All right, now you've seen the 4-point roll. You've seen the 8-point roll. Kevin is coming around from the left. He's going to demonstrate the 16-point roll. Let's see if we can stay with him. Watch for the nose pull up. There it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. The 16-point roll. You know, I think he fudged that one a little bit. That's okay. We enjoyed it nonetheless. Kevin Rousseau and his AT-6. Now he's going to bring this thing around. He's going to bring his airplane around. He's going to do a loop and an Immelman. Now you've seen loops before. It was a basics back in the barnstorming era, adapted for training. And this airplane loops so nicely. But the one thing you got to remember is that if you're going to loop the airplane, you got to dive it down a little bit to get a little bit of extra airspeed going. About 5,000 pounds, and you've only got 600 horsepower up front. I know 600 horsepower sounds like a lot, but when you're going vertical in a 5,000 pound airplane, it's not as much as you might think. Now Kevin's going to swing out to our left a little bit, and he's going to turn the airplane around, and he's going to do a couple of photo passes for us so you can get a really good look at this pretty airplane. You're going to be able to get lots of pictures. Here he comes. Here's Kevin Rousseau, the photo pass. He sure got that prop control all the way forward. The sound.
Flamethrower. The success of others in battle convinced the U.S. of its efficacy, and a team of engineers was hastily assembled to design one. What resulted was the M1 flamethrower, a complicated design that flamethrower was simple, devastatingly effective, and best of all, was utterly reliable. In fact, it could be rolled through the soap and sand and still operate properly. This became the most successful flamethrower campaign. The ability of the flamethrower to knock out bunkers and pillboxes was quickly grasped, and the motor fielded to each Marine division went from a handful in 1943 to 243 less than a year later. Iwo Jima and Okinawa proved that as shock troops they have no fears. The Marine Assault Squad was tailored for the mission, and not only had Browning automatic rifles as its U.S. Army counterpart, but also had organic demolition teams. Using their unique corkscrew and blowtorch tactics, the Marines became expert at close combat, destroying pillboxes and strong points using satchel charges and flamethrowers.
From Suribachi's 500-foot elevation, enemy mortars hold the entire island in range. Slowly, the Marines push forward up Mount Suribachi.
looks like we have a battle reenactment going on back there.
Pennsylvania miner's son, a boy from the Midwest city of Detroit, and a Texas high school football star. The picture has since become synonymous with the American fighting spirit. Ladies and gentlemen, have your cameras ready. Courtesy of the Pacific Area Marine Cadre here at World War II weekend, here is our salute to all the veterans of World War II. The Pacific Island Cadre reenactors for their participation in this year's World War II weekend. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, we've got airplanes that we're going to be recovering. Smoke is on! That's a pretty hard pull considering the age of this airplane. There he goes. The Bucher 133 was a development of the
131 Youngman, which was the two-seat version of this airplane as Jerry goes up over the top. Now, the remarkable part about this airplane is that this thing was designed and first flown back in 1935. Hammerhead stall turn there. And one of the things that was noticed about this aircraft was its agility. Point rolls there from Jerry Wells. The airplane was highly maneuverable, so much so that in 1938 it became the Luftwaffe Standard Advanced Trainer. Now, originally it was powered by a Hertz engine, but considering as how we wreaked havoc on Germany, the planes may have survived and some of the engines may survive, but for the majority of it, the engines are no longer available, and parts, if you can find them, are almost non-existent and highly expensive. Back onto the vertical there, smoke is on, watch for the kick. Now, this airplane came through with 160 horsepower originally, but because he couldn't find an original engine that was in actual airworthy condition, Jerry Wells went with a modern engine. It's a classic airplane with a modern engine. You see a lot of that in reproduction aircraft, but this is an original. And for those of you who remember the movie The Great Waldo Pepper, the paint job on this airplane resembles the fictional character Ernst Kessler in that movie. That's the color scheme that is on it, and in the movie Great Waldo Pepper. And of course the Kessler character was based on Ernst Udet, whose autobiography Ace of the Iron Cross is a pretty good read, I hear. As you can see, it has very good vertical performance, but it would with 360 horsepower. I'm sure the original, although it had good vertical performance, it probably didn't climb like Jerry Wells' airplane. Right through the sun. Thank you, Jerry. This airplane stood the aerobatics world on its ear when it was introduced into various aerobatic contests over in Europe back before the war started. Looks like we've got Germans doing recon out there. I'm wondering if Jerry Wells might be spotting for them, but we've got Jerry on the move out there with a recon patrol. This could be trouble. In the meantime, Jerry Wells is going to bring that Bucher Youngmeister back around here. There are two versions of this. He's flying the Youngmeister, which is the single-seat version. There's the Youngmen, which is the two-seater. The vertical again. The airspeed's going to bleed off. There's the rudder kick. It is the hammerhead stall turn. And this, too, is an actual combat maneuver. Way back in the Pacific War, one of the favorite tactics done by the Japanese, see that? He rolled to the left and broke to the right. One of the favorite tactics that they used against Wildcats was they would go onto the vertical. The Zero would climb significantly better than the Wildcat, and the Wildcat would go into a spin. The Japanese fighter pilot would do a hammerhead stall turn and take the Wildcat out. There's Jerry Wells with a loop. About 4 G's on the pull out there. Once again, it is a deceptively difficult maneuver. The idea is to make it look as round as possible can be very difficult to do. Jerry, however, is up there making it look so easy. Comes out of that, pushes over the top. Snap rolls. They call them snap rolls because the way you set the airplane up, you cross control it and the wings on one side of the airplane are stalled. They are no longer flying while the other side is flying, and what it does is it makes the airplane snap right around. There he is. A little bit of a knife edge descent there. Oh, looks like we got more recon patrols out there. There's Jerry inverted hanging by the belts. Oh, he's pushing out. That's doing it the hard way. All the blood in your body is going to your brain. You can indeed get a significant headache from doing that. Oh no, the Germans are on the move. We've been invaded.
Uh-oh.
Oh no!
I'm going Americans.
And here's Jerry Wells coming up onto the vertical again. It's going to roll it around a little bit up there. I know what we're waiting for. There it is. That is the torque roll. It's the torque of the engine that's rotating the airplane around. Wow, we're really getting invaded. Oh, I see the Allies have joined us too. As Jerry Wells continues with his Bucher. And there he goes onto a 45-degree upline. Let's see what's going to happen. Oh, he's got some snap rolls going on up there. You can see them. And he recovers successfully. The top. That's a half Cuban 8. He's getting ready to go and do another half. Jerry, man, you're in the line of fire, dude. Comes back up over the top. This time he's going to complete the maneuver. It's called the Cuban 8. Wait for the rollout. There it is. It was invented back in 1933 by Len Povey. And there he goes, an aileron roll. He rolled to the left, broke to the right again. Len Povey introduced the maneuver in 1933, and he was flying at the time for the Cuban Air Force. So knowing where his bread was buttered, he called it the Cuban 8. There's 2, there's 3, there's the 4-point hesitation roll. Back up onto the vertical. He's going to turn the airplane around. One of the nice aspects of this aircraft is the fact that it stays up close and personal. Looks like a pretty good ride too from where I am. A little bit of a whifferdille there, not quite a stall turn. He still had some forward airspeed on the plane. And there he goes, rolling the airplane around. Now I believe that Jerry Wells is going to set up for a photo pass here for those of you while the battle rages. Here he comes, ladies and gentlemen. Jerry Wells, the Bucher Youngmeister. Youngmeister. Looks like he's going to turn around and give us another photo pass. Should be pretty interesting with the Army out there in the field. And here we go, a nice beautiful low photo pass here, courtesy of Jerry Wells. in just a moment, we are going to recover Jerry Wells. And when he does land, we will get going. More than a match for the German Panzer III. It's a little old by designs, but the Germans are throwing pretty much in anything they have by this stage of the war. You have a Sherman M4A3E8. It's called the Easy 8. Has a 76 millimeter gun, very effective on most German armors, and pretty much even the big stuff if he catches it from the back or the side. The Americans had the great advantage of a lot of supply. American production was war-winning. The Americans had more tanks in France than the Germans made during the entire war, and that is something. You see an American armored car that got a little too close to the Germans. That is a M20 armored car that carries personnel. It's with a 50 caliber machine gun, very similar to the German armored car. It goes in, scouts, has enough firepower to do a little damage and get out of there quick. The American infantry is in the half-tracks. Half-tracks were used by the Americans and the Germans to transport troops. The Americans weren't really fighting vehicles. They did have some support with the machine guns, but they weren't at the front lines. The armor of the half-track was such that it was mainly good for artillery shrapnel, which is kind of lower velocity. The German squads are moving up, and you can see the German squad leaders moving, and they're advancing. The Panzer III is firing at the Sherman, but it doesn't look like it's hurting the Sherman any much. Incidentally, if you saw the movie Fury, the type of Sherman that we have out here is exactly the same type that was in that movie. German fires again. The Americans are trying to advance, trying to liberate more French soil, while the Germans are desperately trying to hold off the Allied onslaught as they edge closer and closer to the German Reich and the home and fatherland. Some of the other smaller vehicles, you see a German Opel truck, you see a Kübelwagen, and yes, that is a Volkswagen Beetle. That was designed in 1938, and that was used by the German Army. Now the Americans are pressing forward. The Sherman is covering the American half-track as it moves forward. That 76 millimeter gun of the American Sherman doing damage to the forces of the German Wehrmacht. And folks, it looks like this small battle for the French countryside is over, and the Americans have liberated more of France. The Americans really had tough going until August when they had the breakout. And by then, by early September, the Germans were in. most certainly not least, here comes Panchito. People building a lot of airplanes. From the left, ladies and gentlemen, Grant Schwartz at the controls, co-pilot John Albright. Here comes Yankee Lady. At the controls. Here comes takeoff time. I love the sound of those R2600s. 1,700 horsepower aside, capable of carrying 3,200 pounds of bombs, 272 mile an hour top speed. Here comes Panchito. Max Hodges and Larry Kelly at the controls. For the movie, they call her the movie Memphis Belle. And here comes Yankee Lady. By the way, you might still be able to get a ride on this airplane if you so desire. Bomb bay doors are open. You have the plane. With the help of the Norton bomb sight and the autopilot on board, the bombardier would line it up, and then the call would be bombs away. And the first thing the pilot is thinking is, let's get the heck out of here. Here's takeoff time. December 7th, 1941. Japan bombs Pearl Harbor. The country is low. We've been hurt. FDR comes up with a bold plan. He says, hey, we want to shake the Japanese up. We've got to shake them up. And he comes up with a brilliant plan. From the left, Panchito.
That's cool.
Shook the Japanese. Get ready for the photo passes, everybody. Here comes Yankee Lady from the left. Japan. The effect was minimal, but it held troops back to defend the mainland, so there was an effect. Here comes takeoff time. Now, as the war ended, the Doolittle Raiders had reunions. And the thing of it being is, Larry Kelly, who is out here flying right seat, and Panchito coming by right now, has been heavily involved with the efforts of the Doolittle Raiders for their reunion. Here's Panchito. Schwartz, John Albright at the controls there. Takeoff time is coming around here. Jim Vosell, Ryan Parenti. Kelly was so heavily involved in the Doolittle reunions that he was actually made an honorary Doolittle Raider. From the left, Panchito. Once again, you might be lucky enough to be able to book a Warbird ride on these aircraft. It never hurts to ask. It's not just an airplane ride, it's a step back in history. Gives you a little taste of what our boys went through way back in World War II. A little taste, not a lot, but just enough to make you realize that those were extraordinary men in extraordinary times. Look at this, holding it off, holding it off, holding it off. Chirp. Now they're going to use aerodynamic braking. Hold that nose wheel off, because aerodynamic braking is free. The idea is to try to conserve the brakes on the aircraft because, well, they're expensive. And I might add a bit of a bear to replace. Here comes Panchito. Perfect landing. Doesn't get any better than that, does it? These guys have got so many thousands of hours of flight time, and they make it look so easy. This is Fifi. horsepower apiece. Coming up next, taking the runway right now, getting ready to go. This will be Diamond Lil. And she's rolling. Notice the main landing gear on the B-24. The total number of B-24s built was 19,267, making it the most widely produced Allied bomber. A ton of airplanes too. They were cranking them out one every 90 minutes, I believe. That's a lot of airplanes. And you know who was building most of the airplanes at that time? It was the lady, Rosie the Riveter. She never got the glory that the B-17 did, even though there were more of them, and they were involved in some critical missions like the Plesty oil raids. From the left, ladies and gentlemen, here comes the Commemorative Air Force's B-29 Fifi, Bill Gokin, Neil Broussard at the controls. Now, the B-29 did have engine problems early on, and to be honest, the restorations also had engine problems, but somebody came up with a brilliant idea, because later on in the life of the Wright 3350, they fixed those problems to the point where those engines were used in the DC-7 as well as the Lockheed Constellation. So what did they do? They fixed the problem. They took the newer power sections, married it to the older accessory sections, and a new engine was born. From the left, here comes Diamond Lil. I'll tell you, right after Fifi goes by, here she comes, photo pass.
Get this. Okay, right from here.
When the fuel tank on the auxiliary power unit broke loose and the airplane caught fire. Unfortunately, the Keybird could not be saved. She burned to the ground. Almost had 3 of them. From the left, here comes Diamond Lil, the consolidated B-24 Liberator. North Carolina, and was restored and flew again in July 2013. Here comes Fifi. Of course, we all know the B-29, what it is most famous for, and that would be the delivery of the atomic bombs to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The original one, the first one, was flown by General Paul Tibbets himself. He named it after his mother. He called her the Enola Gay. Dropped the atomic bomb on August the 6th on the city of Hiroshima and literally flattened it. 3 days later, a second one was dropped on the city of Nagasaki by an airplane called Boxcar. The Enola Gay is down at the Udvar Hazy branch of the Air and Space Museum. Boxcar sits in the Air Force Museum at Dayton, Ohio. You should go and see them both. Very significant aircraft. From the left, here comes Diamond Lil. Ashbrook, Al Harum, and Diamond Lil, and at the controls of Fifi, Bill Gokin and Neil Broussard. I have to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I met General Paul Tibbets many years ago, and I thanked him for saving my father's life. My dad enlisted in the Navy in April of 1945. If there had been an invasion of Japan, I do firmly believe my dad would have been right in the middle of it all. And when I shook his hand, he said, you know, you're not the first person who said that to me. True gentleman, Paul Tibbets did an incredible job with the 509th, delivering the atomic bombs and ending the war. From the left, here comes Fifi in for a landing. Commemorative Air Force, B-29, B-24 Squadron. Of course, the P-51 Mustang.
There you go.
And number 4 engines are both shut down. Here's Diamond Lil. Now the reason to shut down the engines 1 and 4 on Fifi are pretty simple and actually very good. They don't want to hit the propeller. And here comes takeoff time. Hey everybody, don't forget to wave as they taxi by. from the left. At the controls of the very rare P-63A King Cobra, demonstrating the art of a loop. Now, this was powered by the Allison engine, the original prototypes, of which there were 3 that were built. 2 were going to be powered by Allisons. The third one was going to have a Merlin in it. The problem was they couldn't get the engines. They were all promised to the P-51s. From the right, the P-63. Engineering went on this airplane, but the Allison engine was a good engine, but it had to have was returned to flight status. I believe 2 frangible bullets at the airplane and not actually shoot it down, so you could give student pilots actual gunnery practice against a live airplane without damaging it. Light on it that lit up should you hit the target just right. They called them pinballs because if you did hit the right places on it, the light. And from the right with the photo pass, Mark Todd, the P-63A. Comes a second photo pass. As we entered the war. It's a good airplane, and the British wanted them, and I'll tell you more about that story as we get into the flight. Cheeto. how these A cards are. Here's Nick Ceroli Jr., the P-40 Warhawk. To controls of the North American P-51 Mustang, Craig Hutain out there. Packard-built Rolls-Royce Merlin engine powering this airplane. The laminar wing, which people said could not be put into production because the tolerances are too tight. North Americans said, yeah, we can do it. They did, and a legend was born. The issue was Merlins. And there you see Craig Hutain flying the legend. And what made the legend even more legendary was the addition of drop tanks. Now, the P-51 could escort our bombers all the way to Berlin, the very heart of Germany. And they did it with great success. From the left, Craig Hutain, the North American P-51 Mustang. Built a lot of planes, didn't they? Seek out and destroy the enemy. Photo pass. And then the engine went kerplooey. In this order, we're in the P-39, Mike Spaulding, the P-63, Mark Todd, in the P-51, Greg Hutain, and in the P-40, Nick Ceroli Jr. Into formation, you better get those cameras rolling now, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very rare event. A P-39 flying in formation with his cousin, the P-63.
They're going to come around that way.
station. Here we go, everybody. To land. Now, ladies and gentlemen, one of the really neat things about the end of the show here today is the fact that you can stick around and watch many of these airplanes departing. Something that is relished by a lot of people, myself included. And some of the static aircraft that are here, they'll be heading out too. A lot of the ones that we didn't fly in the show here today, they will be departing as well. So you can stick around and you can watch them fly too. My name is Fast Eddie. It has been a privilege and an honor to be the air show announcer here at this year's World War II weekend. You all have a safe trip home. We'll see you next year.